Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Mystical Awakenings. This class, we will be continuing in our life path and our destiny.
Cool. So this class is on destiny, life's purpose, and life's lesson. And we all have one, right?
Mm.
So destiny, what is it? What's the difference between destiny and fate?
Can one of them be changed over time?
Yes.
Okay.
So your life is fated
Mm-hmm.
as long as you're unconscious.
Mm.
Okay? We've been talking in all these classes about raising your perceptions into higher consciousness, right? We have the conscious mind, the subconscious, the unconscious, and what's the biggest part? The unconscious
Mm-hmm.
is the biggest part of who we are. And we have certain energy patterns that we bring with us when we're born. And those are the energy patterns that we're trying to work through in this lifetime, so that those energy patterns are things like fear or hopelessness or shame or what have you. So we have all of these, also addictive patterns, these kinds of things. So when you are unconscious of your addictive patterns, when you're unconscious of your energy patterns and how they are affecting you and how they are, what they are causing you to do, so how they affect your behavior, well, guess what? Your life is fated.
Mm.
Your life is fated and it's predictable. The outcome of your life is predictable. So say you've got an alcoholic who is not willing to give up their alcoholism. Well, their fate, as everyone knows with anyone that is a chronic alcoholic, is to get cirrhosis of the liver and die.
Mm.
Well, and someone who is a cigarette smoker, especially if they're smoking several packs of cigarettes a day, their fate is most likely to get lung cancer and die.
Mm.
I believe that the food supply of the world has been more or less adulterated. So if you eat a lot of processed food, you're also going to be eating a lot of processed chemicals in that food.
Mm.
I believe that if you eat an adulterated food supply, it's going to have massive impact on your health. Now,
Mm.
I don't know if it'll cause cancer or some other thing, but something will happen as a result of all these chemicals that you've taken into your body. And body products also can contain a lot of chemicals. If you're using all these products and eating all this food with chemicals, well, then your health is kind of faded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're not going to do well as you age, not unless you have great detoxification genes, which most of us don't have. So once you begin to awaken, then you can change your behavior. You can change your thinking, you can change your belief system, right? All of a sudden you awaken to the fact that, you know what, all these processed foods I'm eating are making me sick, fat, and tired.
Mm.
Well, guess what? I can now decide not to eat those things.
Mm-hmm.
Or wow, these cigarettes, that statistics are that, if you smoke cigarettes, you're going to get lung cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I can choose not to, but you won't choose not to if you have a negative script inside of you, or if you have some other kind of negative programming like um, uh, or dark law. Well, something's going to kill you, so what does it matter what it is? I've heard that argument many times from many people. So I might as well just keep doing this thing that's going to kill me,
Mm-hmm.
because something's going to get me in the end. Might
Yeah.
as well enjoy life while I can.
Mm.
And people have all kinds of excuses for why they can't quit doing their negative habits. Well, we also have negative mental habits as well. And it's our negative mental habits that cause us to do the self-destructive things that we do. And it's not just the habit that needs to be changed, it's also the thoughts that are going on inside of our minds
Mhm.
that need to be changed. And so that's the difference between fate and destiny. Destiny is self-chosen, consciously. I'm going to consciously choose to have X, Y, and Z destiny. I'm going to consciously choose to live a long and healthy, pain-free life. Oh, what do I need to do to create that? And I think that there's more to it than just eating a healthy diet. And, we have to sleep 8 hours a night or however long that you need to have to be refreshed. You have to exercise every day. You have to rest and relax. You have to have loving relationships. You got to have joy and humor in your life. I mean, there's all these things, but you also have to have meaningful work
Mhm.
because people who don't have meaningful work live a more or less meaningless life. And
Mhm.
so meaningful work is an extremely important component of this. But then there's other things like well, I believe that our healthcare system is pretty terrible,
Mhm.
and it's great at helping people after they've been in an accident and sewing them back up and putting them back together and transplanting organs and doing things like that. But what it's not so good at is curing chronic diseases,
Mhm.
degenerative diseases. Not good at all.
Mm.
In fact, it's terrible. That doesn't do it. It doesn't heal those things.
Yeah.
And so, if your if you want your destiny to live a long and healthy and pain-free life, well, then you got to be doing a lot of your own research because it's probably not our doctors that are going to help you do that.
Mm. Yeah.
You have to be doing research and staying abreast of all the latest information. And now that there's all this censoring going on, it's really hard to do that.
Yeah, especially if you're going to Google as your main source. I feel like that's also, it's I feel like the information and the research that is the smartest is to get books on it or to talk to people who are knowledgeable in it, not just, your healthcare provider. But that's a lot harder than just Googling how to cure this or going to my doctor and, oh, my doctor will take care of it. It's a lot harder to do the actual research that is more beneficial than just the easier research.
Right?
Mhm.
And with all the censoring that's going on, it's makes it really hard to find good sources of information.
Yeah.
But there's also this thing called the law of attraction, and
Mhm.
I've been taking health summits for a long time, and because I've been taking these health summits for a long time, people are constantly sending me emails saying, go to this health summit.
Mhm.
It's like it's
Yeah.
coming to me right in my inbox, and
Mhm.
I get to listen to all these health professionals who are like cutting edge
Mhm.
talking about these new technologies and this new information and all this kind of stuff. So it's like there's the law of attraction that works wonders.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually desiring it and manifesting that into your life, not just, "Oh, I wish I would be
Mhm.
healthy. Oh,
Yeah.
I wish I could get better." You can't just sit there and wish, like, if you have to take like those health summits, like, you actually had to actively look into it, sign up for it, go to a few, maybe pay some money. It takes some effort and some level of work and, commitment in a way.
Well, it took total effort and work because
Mm.
I had to sign up for these things. They're free if you watch them during the week they're shown, and unless I wanted to buy them all, I
Mhm.
had to, I had to turn it on. I had to watch it. And if that was really good, I sat down and took notes on it,
Mhm.
and that leads you to other things. And it just helps awaken your consciousness a little bit more and a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I've recently done a lot of work on understanding diabetes
Mhm.
because I started taking my blood sugar and found out that I have prediabetes. And it's like, I'm really skinny.
Yeah.
I only weigh 125 pounds. So it was like, I have prediabetes.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
And I eat a healthy diet, what I consider to be a healthy diet.
Mhm.
Anyway, I didn't eat any processed foods, all the things that I would think that would keep me healthy. It's like, Well, because I began taking my blood sugar and realizing, wow, why is this happening? You know,
Mm,
my blood sugar was always around 100, and pre-diabetes is 100 to 125, and
mm,
then diabetes is 125 and beyond.
mm,
Um, so then I started watching all of these videos on YouTube on the cause of diabetes and pre-diabetes, and I watched all these videos on being a carnivore, and then I went to, other videos by people who do nothing but research this, and that took me to the insulin summit, where there
mm,
was all these doctors just talking about insulin resistance and what causes it.
mm,
And that led me to that led me to a book.
mm,
It's like you said, like,
yeah.
oh, I want to learn more about this. That led me to a book, and the
Mm,
book explained the whole thing, why we have diabetes, what
mm,
it's all about. It's not only a disease of, mostly we think of it as a disease of obesity, but it's not. There's lots and lots of obese people who don't have diabetes,
mhm,
and lots of obese people that do, and lots of skinny people who do have pre-diabetes or diabetes type 2 I'm talking about, and
mm,
lots who don't.
mhm,
Well, what's the commonality? It's
yeah.
not weight.
Mm-mm,
But what this doctor says is that it's caused by weight, and it's caused by a fatty liver and a fatty pancreas. But you know how some people put, when they're gaining weight, they put all their weight on their hips, or, their chest or their thighs, or, some people only put it on in the gut. Well, I'm the type of person that only puts it on in the gut. And
mm,
what this doctor says is that the fat you put on under your skin, that's not harmful. That's the way that we have evolved over thousands of years to survive famine. So that's all controlled by genetics. So
mm,
you can be a skinny person like me, and I've always had really skinny arms and really skinny legs. And when I started putting on weight, it all just right here.
mhm,
So he says that even if you're skinny, you could be putting weight on in your liver and in your pancreas. And what happens when you get liver, when you get your pancreas gets fatty, is it leans on the beta cells, and the beta cells are what produce insulin, and it
mhm,
kind of puts them to sleep.
mm, mm,
So when you take off the weight, and that's why people who are obese can lose 30 pounds and suddenly they're not diabetic anymore,
yeah.
because they've lost the weight out of those organs.
Mm, yeah.
I mean, it was just like totally eye-opening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I'm meaning. It's like you can't depend on the status quo. You can't
Mhm.
depend on the consensus reality to inform you.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and most likely if you go to your doctor and, "Oh, hey, like I noticed this," and "Okay, here, take these medications and it will go down." It's not really curing it, and you can't rely on medications for, how long are you gonna have to take those the rest of your life?
Right. Well, the medications do nothing to deal with the underlying condition.
Mhm. Yeah.
So the underlying condition goes on the same. So I've been on I've been trying to lose weight recently, and just so I can get back down to what I was before I had this problem, which is
Mhm.
like 115 pounds. Not
Mhm.
quite there yet, but and most people would consider that really, really skinny because I'm 5'8".
Mhm.
But for me, for my body type and my genes,
Mhm.
that's what's appropriate for me.
Mhm.
Whereas somebody else, they could be 50 pounds overweight and not ever get diabetes.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
it's
and even me, I checked my BMI, and according to the BMI, I'm considered underweight. But for me, I feel healthy. I eat 3 meals a day. I eat really good foods. I don't eat really any processed foods. Um, I only eat fast food maybe once a month. I don't really eat it, if any. I don't really eat that bad. I eat pretty good. I mean, I guess I could gain a few pounds, but it's a healthy weight for me. But for
right.
some other people, if they're naturally kind of heavy and if they were my weight, they would probably be very unhealthy. It depends on your genetics and how your
Hmm.
body wants to keep a weight on you.
Yeah, yeah, and your bone structure and so many things like that. I have a daughter that's a little bit taller than me, and she weighs like 40 pounds more than me, but she has much bigger bones. You know,
Mhm.
her bone structure is bigger. And when I look at her, it's like she's gorgeous. You know,
Mhm.
she just, her weight and everything looks perfect. And here I am, 20 pounds less, you know,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it's just like, how does this happen? Because my bones are really small and thin.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody carries weight differently.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
anyway, that was kind of a conscious evolutionary thing I've gone through in the last 3 or 4 months since I started doing all this. All of a sudden, my mind has been open in a
Mhm.
way that I was, I just was unconscious of.
Mhm. Yeah.
So anyway, and I did learn something. One of the ways I was putting on, causing this insulin problem that I have is I was eating a lot of smoothies.
Mhm.
And when you eat blend up fruit,
Mhm.
that's the worst way to eat it because it digests way too quickly and produces too much insulin.
Mhm. Yeah.
So anyway, I stopped doing that. So
Yeah.
life is a lifelong learning experience, right?
Yeah, it's like a never-ending puzzle. You always have another piece, and you gotta figure out where it goes and what to do, and
Right. So when I was writing up these notes originally, I had watched this movie, and I didn't write the name of it down at the time, but it was a movie based on a true story. And I always like movies based on a true story, especially if they're inspirational movies. And I thought this was going to be a miracle story because it was about this really Christian man who got cancer. And he was trying to heal himself. And the first thing he did was he went to the doctor, and of course, they started giving him chemotherapy right away. And he had a very strong family support system. He was engaged to be married, and so he had that support system right there, his fiance. And he had church support. Everyone was praying for him. He had a pretty good attitude towards life. He was certain that God was going to heal him. God was going to heal him. So as the movie unfolds, we come to the end of it, and he dies.
Mhm.
And it was like, I watched this whole movie for
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. Like, that
Because
was
I
an
was expecting a
anticlimax.
miracle to happen
Yeah.
at the end. What's the point of this movie,
Mhm.
right? And well, then it shows the real people right at the end. You know how sometimes movies based on a true story will show the real people at the end.
Mhm.
Well, and the actors were, quite attractive, as they always are.
Mhm.
And the real people were grossly obese.
Mhm.
And they also drove something called a pigmobile.
Mhm.
And it was like a van with like a pig, and I mean, it had been created to have a pig nose and like ears.
Mhm.
And it showed them eating one of the first scenes in the movie was all this like processed junk food.
Mhm.
And I really had to process this movie. And what has happened in our world is we live in a world of victim consciousness, and it's all about blame and not taking responsibility for your own creations. And this movie was so indicative of what's going on in society. Because even though this man had all the emotional support and spiritual support, and he was a Christian man who believed in the Christian paradigm and that Jesus could heal him and all of this kind of stuff. And I believe all these things. I mean, I believe that God heals people.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Um, so why wasn't he healed? And to me, the answer was obvious. God wants us to take responsibility for our belief system and our behaviors,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Now, a century ago, humanity learned, I don't know exactly when it was, that we had to clean up our act as far as hygiene goes, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
There was something in I forget when it was, in the 1700s, something called childbed fever. Are you aware of that? Which,
Mhm.
when doctors would deliver the babies, male doctors, it used to be that women, pregnant women were always delivered by other women,
Mhm.
the healers of, you know, midwives that lived in the areas
Mhm.
that they lived in. But then doctors, the government made it illegal for women to deliver babies. So that went to men. So now we've got all these men delivering babies, and suddenly women start dropping dead of what's called childbed fever. And what happened is that these doctors knew nothing about washing their hands, they knew nothing about hygiene. We hadn't yet, as a humanity, awoken
Mhm.
to the idea that hygiene is really important, right?
Mhm.
And so they would go from one woman to the next without washing their hands, and they would spread these germs that cause childbed fever, and the women would die.
Mhm.
So thousands and thousands and thousands of women died. And there was a man that kind of a doctor who finally came up with this theory. It's because we're not washing our hands. Well, he was completely ostracized. You know
Mhm.
how when you bring something new in that
Yeah.
the prevailing paradigm, nobody wants to believe it. You know,
Mhm.
who would want to believe that, oh, I've been killing all these women,
Yeah. Yeah, they don't wanna
right?
take responsibility and
They don't want
accountability.
to take responsibility. They don't want to believe that about themselves. And so they just ostracize the one that's, making the waves.
Mhm.
And well, I think we have the same thing going on today.
Mhm.
Only now we all know about hygiene. We know the importance of washing our hands. We know the importance that when a doctor does an operation that everything has to be sterilized and they have to be in a sterile environment and all of that stuff. But here's what we don't know. What we haven't yet grown up to and learned as a human race is that all these chemicals that they are putting on our planet, in our skies, in our soil, in our food, in our supplements, in our medicines, well, they're just as toxic
Mhm.
to us.
Yeah.
But the human race hasn't yet awakened to this fact, and doctors haven't awakened to this fact. And
Mhm.
so I think that the reason why this man died was because he was eating bad food. And my belief system says that God's not going to come between you and your creation. If
Mhm.
you are killing yourself because you're doing something to kill yourself, well, God's not going to come between you and that creation. What would you learn?
Yeah, nothing. And he gave us free will.
Yeah, He gave us free will either to improve our lives or destroy our lives,
Mhm.
right? And He's not going to come in between. However, that said, I also do believe that God creates miracles all the time,
Mhm.
that God does intervene in many mysterious ways we don't understand. I believe in the power of group prayer,
Mhm.
but I also believe that we have to take responsibility
Mhm.
for what we're doing to cause the problems that we're creating.
Yeah, he's not gonna fix I mean, you're not gonna make the same mistake over and over again, and he's not gonna fix it over and over again. That's really up
Yeah,
to you.
that's up to you.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah, and sometimes you can do everything right and still die. I understand that too. The body's mysterious, and our time that we're to make our transition, I think that's set before we even are born. All of that still is. I don't understand all of that kind of stuff, but anyway,
Mhm.
there's nothing black and white about it.
Mhm.
So let's talk about this thing called the aurora boreas, and I've talked about that before. Do you remember what that is?
Mm-mm.
It's the snake eating its tail.
Oh, yes. Mhm.
Okay. And it's also called the ring pass knot.
Mhm.
So Lazarus talks about the aurora boreas, and it is a belief system that when you're trapped in it, it's like the snake eating its own tail. You
Mhm.
can never get out of this belief system until you have a sea change, until something shifts totally
Mhm.
in order for you to see it differently. And that's the way I see Christianity. Christianity has so many beautiful beliefs and is so powerful in so many ways, but it needs purification. It needs to be updated, so to speak,
Mhm.
um, because Christianity was created in a time of victim consciousness.
Mhm.
Christianity and all the major religions. I only pick on Christianity because that's the only one I really know a whole lot about.
Mhm.
They were all created at a time in victim consciousness. in Christianity, it says Jesus died on the cross for your sins,
Mm-hmm.
that God sent his only begotten son to die on the cross for your sins. Well, that belief was created at a time when people were really sacrificing other people.
Mm-hmm.
They really were sacrificing their children.
Mm-hmm.
That's when that belief was created.
Yeah.
But when a non-Christian looks at that and they say to themselves, well, what kind of monster would send his son to die for somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wouldn't want to be that person.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? A non-Christian looks at that and goes, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So to me, that belief is like an Ouroboros. And that is such a sacred belief in the Christian religion that they can't see beyond it. They can't look at that from a higher perspective and go, wow, that comes right out of victim consciousness,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And so, and I think, I suspect that all the religions are like that. But I think Christianity as a whole has so many beautiful and profound and powerful beliefs. And when I began working with this inner guide that I call the Beloved, I wasn't thinking of myself as a Christian or anything of that nature. But this being was so kind and so loving, and without him, I could not have healed myself, because for me, it was that personal relationship with the divine that I needed to know that I was loved and cared for.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't call him Jesus, though.
Yeah.
It didn't even occur to me
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And yet, when I look at the energy energetically, it's like, was that Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that Jesus just a word that really refers to this energy
Mm-hmm.
of what is called Christ,
Yeah.
a highly evolved, activated energy that is all loving and all powerful?
Mm-hmm.
You see? And so that's what I'm saying, that our religions need purification for us to, and I believe if they would purify themselves, they'd make a whole lot more converts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially because of, I mean, I feel like Christianity and Catholicism, I feel like just its past and everything that it stood for has given it a bad name, especially, as we were talking about earlier, all these priests and so many scandals that they're child molesters, and it's giving Christianity and that whole religion a bad name. And
Mm-hmm.
especially with the way that I was taught who God is, and the way that Christians are like, you're gonna go to hell if you do this, and threaten you to change your life or else. And that gives it all a really bad name, and that's not who God is, especially even in the Bible. Or the Bible even says like, oh, women should not be in authority, women should let their husbands speak for them, and that stuff. It's like God doesn't believe that. Like God doesn't genuinely, or that, Christians believe that in the Bible it says you can't eat shellfish, and you can't wear two materials, and you can't wear two different fibers in the same outfit. And it's like, they don't pay attention to that because it's inconvenient and impossible, but they pay attention to saying that God hates homosexuals, and God, hate is sexist and all these things. It's like, that's not who God is. That's not who my God is, at least.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so my opinion is, if they purify, it
Yeah.
would be so much better off for everybody.
Yeah.
Because what is good about church, in my opinion, is the sense of community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That you can go, it's a place where you can go and worship and sing and
Mm-hmm.
pray together and just be together in a good way,
Mm-hmm.
with other like-minded people. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot more people would join
Yeah. Yeah.
if it was purified.
Mm-hmm.
So beyond destiny, which is self-chosen, we also have something called our focuses. And according to Lazarus, everybody has 7 focuses
Mm-hmm.
that we choose before we're born. And the first 2 focuses are the same for everybody, but the last five can be as varied as there are people. This has to do with your focuses, have to do with the way you're going to fulfill your destiny. So again, destiny is consciously chosen. If you're unconscious, you don't get to choose a destiny. Your life is fated. But
Mhm.
when you're conscious, you will choose a destiny that is in alignment with your life's focuses. So you've heard of the law of attraction, right? And
Mhm.
everybody has their attractions, things that they are attracted to. These attractions have to do with your life's focuses. So the first two focuses everybody has in common, and they are we all come here to have fun.
Mhm.
Does not seem like the planet of fun to me, but
Mhm. Yeah.
we all
Fun.
come here to do it.
I feel like fun in that instance is everyone has their own definition of fun. We all want to
Yes,
enjoy life, but for one person, enjoying life is, I don't know, going to the club and, dancing and, you know, I don't know, some people think doing drugs are fun or, but then other people think staying in and reading a book and drinking hot chocolate is fun. So, fun is a huge, it could be defined in so many different ways.
exactly. So, and also, what's fun to a 2-year-old is no longer fun to
Yeah.
a 22-year-old,
Yeah.
right? And what you find fun, you might think it's really fun to go out drinking with your friends when you're a teenager, but by the time you've had a child, it's like, well, that's no fun.
Yeah. You're
It's
out of
like
it.
I got to stay here and take care of this kid, and I love this kid, and I want to take care of this kid, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so our idea of fun changes as we evolve in consciousness.
Hmm.
And so we're all here to create our own form of fun. So that's what you pointed out. You and I are more internally driven. So I enjoy research. I enjoy, doing certain kinds of activities that other people don't enjoy.
Hmm.
And definitely don't enjoy doing what they want to do. It's like the stock car racing crowd. It's like
Yeah.
they like it.
Yeah. Or like sports. I don't enjoy watching. I think wasting my life and by
Right?
staring at a screen. But some people can watch it all day.
Day long. No,
Yeah.
it's exactly.
Yeah.
So we all come here to learn to have fun, but it's your form of fun, the way you define it, of course, and it will evolve as you mature in years.
Hmm.
Um, and the other thing we all come here to do is to learn how to consciously create our reality.
Hmm.
Consciously.
Hmm.
We all create our reality every minute of the day, but most of us, the vast majority, even myself, we're doing it unconsciously, right? Something manifests. It's like, how did I create that?
Yeah.
Who in their right mind would create that? Who
Yeah.
in their right mind would create cancer in their body?
Yeah.
Well, that's your unconscious creation.
Yeah, and most people don't even believe that they can create anything in their life consciously. Um, it's just I was reading, um, I had an assignment for my psychology class, and it was about your personal belief system or something like that. And it was the degree at which you believe that your internal beliefs alter your external beliefs or your external things that happen to you, basically. And it's like you could think that, that you have to exercise, but you may not believe that it actually benefits your health, or you may believe that you have to do something, but it's not going to affect you internally. It's not going to make you happy when really it,
Mhm.
it can and it does. And usually the most successful people are the people that believe that, my internal being affects my external being. So I have to be very conscious of it.
Yes,
Hmm.
you're absolutely right. So we all want to create our reality and it's consciously, and we want to create it a successful reality.
Hmm.
We don't want to create an unsuccessful reality or a reality that isn't any fun. We
Hmm.
all want to create a reality that is successful and fun.
Hmm.
You put
Yeah.
those two focuses together, right? And isn't that what we're focused on?
Yeah.
Once you get to a certain age, it's like, what am I going to do to make a living that's fun,
Mhm.
right? I want a partner that's fun.
Mhm.
I want to do something that's fun and enjoyable.
Yeah.
I don't want to be bored to death in some office or,
Mhm.
doing some meaningless task the rest of my life that doesn't encourage my creativity or
Mhm.
my imagination, right?
Yeah.
Yet 99% of the jobs in the world are probably like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So figuring out what our life's purpose is the core of human experience.
Mhm.
That this is something that we need to do in life.
Mhm.
Because if we don't do that, well, we're looking at a boring life or a terrible life
Mhm.
or just a mediocre life.
Yeah. Or
So
unfulfilling.
unfulfilling, that's another good way to put it, an unfulfilling life. And so the goal is to figure out, well, what am I here for? What is my life's purpose? Why did God put me here? I've always been taught, and you probably were too, that there's certain things that only I can do in the world.
Mhm.
That God gave us a purpose, that we have a purpose for being here. What
Mhm.
the heck is it? Well, just
Mhm.
asking yourself that question sends out a stream of energy that
Mhm.
eventually will bring that answer to you. You can't just ask yourself one time. It's got to be something you're looking, you're
Mhm.
looking through the haystack. Where's the needle?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, focusing your attention on that.
Yeah.
Um, and so what God gives us is focuses. Now I say God, I'm talking about the God within yourself. There's nothing outside you.
Mhm.
There's nothing outside you. Remember, of course, that you've got your real self or your true self, higher self, soul, and way up here, your God self,
Mhm.
right? This is your higher consciousness, all attached to you through
Mhm.
your chakra system. So before you come into body, you decide this is what my life's purpose is, and how am I going to figure this out? How it's the needle in the haystack. How am I going to find it? Well, it has to do with what you are attracted to, and you could be attracted to 1,000 million different things. Some people, I'm just absolutely and utterly fascinated with car mechanics, right? And they
Mhm.
spend hours. I mean, a car mechanic spends hours and hours and hours, not necessarily going to a school, but on the job, listening to all these little noises and sounds and all these things that I can't even hear. It's like, oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know, I didn't even notice my car was making that sound.
Yeah.
Just like right over my head. So they're focusing. And if you're you could focus on becoming a stripper.
Mhm.
That's what you think is going to make you fulfilling. It's going to make you a ton of money and make your life easier and so forth and so on. Or you could focus on becoming a musician,
Mhm.
and playing your instrument. And now I can play this thing. Well, how am I going to make a living with it? Or
Mhm.
you know these kinds of things. So if you are on a path of growth, spiritual growth, you will have chosen at least some of your focuses from a very small pool, and it's that pool I'm going to talk to you about. And you're going to recognize some of these because you're on a path of growth. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Most people listening to this video, if they come across it and decide they want to listen to it all the way through, they're definitely going to be on a path of growth, because otherwise, why would you even be interested in this
Mhm.
information?
Yeah.
So, and some people will find all of their focuses from this relatively small pool, which was me. I found all of my focuses are right here in this pool. So we all come here to learn how to consciously create a successful and fun reality,
Mhm.
right? So focus number one. You could choose to focus your attention on learning about love in its entirety and completeness. What is it? How do you do it? What happens when things go wrong? All the things I was telling you last week on the negative ego, and when I gave you the jewels, and These are the rules of good communication. Because
Mhm.
if you don't follow these rules, your loving relationships are toast.
Mhm. Yeah.
You may stay with someone for 60 years, but the love's going to have died. You're just in it for habit. People who have this as a focus are thinking about these things all the time, such as myself,
Mhm.
thinking about, well, what is love and how do you do it and what does it mean? And,
Mhm.
all of these kinds of things. And a lot of times, the way we create a focus is by having its opposite. So I was really lonely most of my life. It's like, well, and it's not that I didn't have partners. I've got 3 children. I've had numerous partners, in this lifetime. It's not that I didn't have that, but none of them fulfilled me.
Yeah.
None of them really felt, I never really felt connected to any of them through the heart. And so as a psychotherapist, of course, well, how do you genuinely create love? We
Mm.
don't know. We're not taught that.
Mm.
There's no courses in high school
Yeah.
on how to create love. There's no courses in college.
Mm.
That could be a whole area of study
Mhm.
with zillions of classes in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I bet people would be a lot happier in life.
Well, absolutely. They'd be a lot happier. The soul is a loveaholic.
Mhm.
We talked about the soul's path. This class, if you haven't watched the other classes, I really suggest going back to the other classes because these classes build one on top of the other. And the soul's path is all about love, right?
Mhm.
The soul doesn't care if you are financially successful at all. The
Mhm.
soul wants to know, did you learn how to love? Did you learn how to forgive? Did you learn how to love yourself? Did you learn how to forgive yourself?
Mhm. Yeah.
Right? It's all about nurturing. It's all about kindness and caring. It's about partnership. It's
Mm.
about community. It's about this thing called love,
Mhm.
right? And we don't have any classes in this.
Mm. Yeah.
Doesn't that kind of blow your mind?
Yeah. Yeah, I was watching a video the other day on I think it was like a TED Talk, and it was this guy talking about it was a Harvard study, and he took a group of 100 and something men and asked them when they were young, it was a study across their whole lives, and it was a study, they asked them, "What do you think would make you the happiest in life?" And most of them said either money or fame. And at the end of the study, they found that the ones that were genuinely happy were the ones that had loving relationships in their life. And even the ones that were have been divorced, like it even said like having being divorced makes you more happier than staying in a relationship that is not loving. And yeah, so it just kind of showed like that's the genuine, like that's the key to having a happy life is, there's so many things, but on top of it is having loving relationships, either with your family or platonic friends, a romantic partnership, anything.
Hmm. Right, exactly. Loving relationships and meaningful work are the keys to having a happy life. If you don't have that, you will be chronically unhappy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely true. I think I've mentioned before, I got my degree in counseling psychology and spent 2.5 years studying, going to classes, and not one professor ever used the word love.
Mm. Mm.
It's like, is that insane?
Yeah.
There's something really wrong with that picture.
Yeah. It's like, what are they even teaching? I mean, I could see teaching the technical terms of something, or and that's really important, but if you don't know, kind of like a doctor, if you don't know the genuine cause, or you don't know the root of the problem, then how are you supposed to help somebody?
You can't possibly heal it. That's right.
Yeah.
Again, we create these focuses usually by not having it in your life. And
Mm.
then you want to know. So you practice, so you research it and you read books on it and you do your best to figure it out and then try it out. So the second focus is one of communication as a means of self-expression. So if this is your focus, you're either going to be a writer or a musician or an artist, a storyteller of some kind, um, you know, you're going to make movies, an actor, an actress, these kinds of things. So self-expression, how can I express myself?
Mm.
But it's not just any old kind of art or any old kind of music. It's music or art or writing that uplifts people, that inspires people to become more of who they truly are. So I read this book, it's only been about 6 weeks ago. It's called The Bohemians,
Mm,
and it was the story of Dorothea Lange. And Dorothea Lange was a famous artist that was born around the turn of the century. And she was a photographer. She was the first woman, she was the first famous woman's photographer.
mm,
And she got her photography studio was in San Francisco. And um, in order to make a living, she was photographing all these rich people,
mm,
right? Because that was the only way that she could make a living. Eventually, she got enough of a name for herself that she started taking pictures. The depression came along, and she started taking pictures of all these families that were completely down and out, single moms and immigrant, not immigrant families, but the after the Dust Bowl came and they all these people left the farming communities and were traveling in just deplorable conditions. That's how she became famous. She was using art to make a statement to
mm,
help wake people up
mm. Yeah,
to what was going on. So that's what I mean. It's not just art for the sake of doing art, it's
yeah,
to help people.
yeah. It's art
And
with
so,
a purpose.
art with a purpose, exactly. And
Mhm.
another thing, a person that comes to mind is the Harriet Beecher Stowe. Do you know who she is? She
Yeah,
wrote
it sounds familiar.
she wrote Little Tom's Cabin
Mhm,
just prior to the Civil War.
mm,
To help. The Civil War took place at a time where there was no TV, no radio. We People living in the North never traveled south and vice versa. You never went more than a few miles away from your home. They didn't really know what was slavery was all about.
mhm,
And so she wrote that book to paint a picture, so to speak,
mm,
to
yeah,
describe this is what it's all about in a novel form that was emotionally compelling.
mm, yeah,
So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Self-expression as an art form, whether it's music or dance or photography or movie. I mean, I can think of a lot of movies that have been really inspiring. And
mhm,
like that's why I said I love movies based upon a true story that lift you
mhm,
up and inspire you.
yeah,
And I can't name any of those directors or producers, but there are plenty of those kinds of movies out there
mhm,
with that goal. Let's uplift humanity. I mean, most movies you watch, it's like, oh my God, now I'm really depressed.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
that was the most violent movie I ever saw. I've been
yeah.
there and
It's
seen
like
it all, you know,
they wanted to make you feel something, but it's like, I feel something. It's not a good thing, but
right?
it's
It's like
something, you know?
I feel bad about humankind now,
Yeah, it's like, okay, I got the message. You know,
right? Yeah, yeah, we suck.
yeah, got it. Okay, let's move on.
So the third focus that you could have is to encounter specific emotions in your life that give you a lot of trouble. And
Mm,
so I think of the emotion that I had that gave me the most amount of trouble was shame, that feeling of being flawed and no good, can't do anything right, nobody loves me. Huge a pit that people fall in. I believe that there's all kinds of soul traps out there and that we fall into certain pits
mhm,
that give us a lot of trouble. And once we're falling into the pit, then we either have to figure out a way to climb out. We have to do the work to climb out of the pit. And usually somebody will lend us a helping hand or a rope or something. But if you don't climb out of the pit, well, then your life is fated, right? You're just going to go on that trajectory until you die.
mhm, yeah, yeah. And for me, I think that I felt a lot of, and still kind of do, guilt with everything. I mean, I feel like there's so many things to feel bad for in life. And, it's purely based on other people's reactions to things. Like, of course, don't be a bad person. Of course, don't, try your best not to do bad things to others. Then it's like they have a reasonable they have a reason to be upset and you do have a reason to feel guilt, but it's like you have to forgive yourself and make amends to where that guilt doesn't affect you and doesn't affect your life. And I think I felt guilt a lot for either the way that, I kind of felt guilt for putting my inner child in situations where she shouldn't have been. And I didn't feel guilt until like a year or two later. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh gosh, like why did, or things that I've done to my past friends or things that I have said out of anger or things that, and that's normal. That happens to
Yeah,
everybody. And it's like you have to figure out a way to forgive yourself, but not deny accountability for what you did.
yeah.
And it's
That
hard to find the line between those two.
was hard. And what you're not really talking about guilt. You're talking about shame.
Mm,
Shame is, it's a feeling that I did something wrong,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
and um, changing that to remorse is the positive polarity of shame. I did something wrong and I need to make amends. I need to be honest about what I've done, how I've harmed myself, how I've harmed other people,
Mm-hmm.
in my ignorance, in my immaturity, but
Mm-hmm.
still the damage is done.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like for some people, I think back and maybe I've said something or maybe I've done something to somebody back in high school. And it's like I can't just, text them, "Hey, I'm so sorry for that thing that I did 3, 5 years
Mhm.
ago.
Right?
Please forgive me." Like you can't,
Mhm.
and I was watching this show too and it was about this guy and he kind of like that he did something horrible to one of his friends for fame and he goes back and he apologizes him on his deathbed and he's like, "Okay, I don't forgive you." And the guy's
Uh-huh.
like, "What? You're supposed to forget, I'm
Right.
apologizing. You don't." He's like, "Okay,
Hmm.
but I do not forgive you." And it's kind of like, sometimes you have to just forgive yourself and there's not really a way. I mean, not to say that it's too late, but sometimes you can't expect others to forgive you. You kind of
Especially if you did a lot of damage.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're bringing up something that's really, really important. We all have this past. As you evolve, you go, oh my God, what was I thinking
Mhm.
back
Yeah.
then? It's like, how could I, one of the things that I felt a lot of shame was I hurt people all the time,
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
tactless or say things that are just so hurtful,
Mhm.
and you're right. You can't like go take them all back. I don't even know where most of these people are,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. But let me tell you what I did, Yvette. So when I was figuring all this stuff out and really looking at myself through the magnifying glass and owning my shadow and looking at my negative ego and all that kind of stuff, I did a meditation. And in meditation, with my eyes closed, going into an altered state of consciousness, I started visualizing all these people that I had hurt
Mhm.
and telling them in meditation, I'm so sorry.
Mm.
I was just so immature and I don't know why I said that. It was a mean thing to say, and just one after another, one after another, one after another, all that I could remember. And the ones that I remember the most were the ones that are in my life, like my brothers. And, I had a brother that I was really, really jealous of, and I kind of did little mean things to him. And I was just a kid. I mean, I'm talking about when I was 7, 8 years old, but I
Yeah.
know they were really hurtful,
Yeah.
and I actually did go to that brother
Mm.
during that time in my life. And I said, I'm sorry. I really did some mean things to you. I really want you to know that I'm sorry I did those things.
Mm.
And he said, oh, it's no problem. He's all grown up now and gone on with his
Yeah.
life. But it made me feel better saying it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a good way to do it
Mm.
in
Yeah.
meditation,
Yeah.
because it's something that we all need to take responsibility for. We've all done these things,
Mhm.
said things that we shouldn't have said. And
Mhm.
mm, sometimes then we'll probably say them some more in the future.
Yeah.
keep that negative ego in the box, keep
Yeah.
it in those boundaries.
Yeah.
It's not always easy.
Yeah.
So another emotion that a lot of people have to encounter is anger, like
Mhm.
chronic anger at the world, chronic anger at other people. Say you were physically abused or sexually abused as a child, feeling just pissed off and angry and, holding those grievances and choosing never to forgive and things like that. Well, that's an emotion. If you don't process that emotion and get past it, it's going to come up all the time. And not only that, you're going to keep attracting a reality to you that's going to piss you off.
Yeah.
And so that's another huge one.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that's probably the root of why most people do all those mean things and then feel shame about it later is because they were angry in that moment, and when you're
Hmm.
angry, think you're not thinking straight. You're thinking, "Oh, I'm angry. I need to get this make my point across. I need to get
Right.
this out. I need to tell them how angry I am, and I need to make them." Basically, you want the other person to feel the way that you feel, hurt and angry, and yeah.
Right.
So it's
Eye for an eye.
yeah, yeah, you're like, "If I'm angry, you gotta be angry, so I'm gonna make you angry."
Right.
And
If
that's
I'm hurt, I'm going to hurt you back.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's not right, and then later on, you're like, "Wow, that was really messed up." It could be, like, 5 years later, and then you think about it, you're like, "That was really mean," and
Right. Right.
how do you like we were saying, how do you make amends for that? You gotta forgive yourself even if you can't forgive the other if you can't get the forgiveness of the other person.
Hmm. Another emotion that some people have to encounter, people who are chronically depressed, and usually it's related to despair.
Mhm.
Nothing is ever going to improve in my life. Nothing's ever going to get better. I'm just in this pit of
Mhm.
despair eternally,
Yeah.
and you're in this pit. And if you don't get out, your life is fated.
Yeah, and if you continuously believe that, "Oh, I'm stuck here, there's no way out," there won't be a way out. You need to make a way out for yourself, and you can't do that if you're, thinking
You're
negatively.
hopeless,
Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah.
right? And for some people, it's fear. It's
Mhm.
paranoia, always suspecting other people. People have PTSD, they start suspecting everybody's out to get them. And,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
or it's the fear of failure and the fear of being disappointed and the fear of being rejected, and that's gonna happen if you take chances, and if you wanna live a very successful life, you're gonna fail a few times, and you're gonna be
and you're going to be
disappointed.
rejected a few times.
Yeah, you're gonna be all those things, you're gonna be let
Mhm.
down, and you're gonna be this, and but I mean, that's how you live a successful life, is to go through those things and to get back up after.
Right.
Mm.
Lazar says that we're here to feel the full range of our emotions, both
Mhm.
positive and negative. There's no negative emotion. There
Mm.
is only unexpressed emotion, and emotions, they don't always need to be expressed to other people, because sometimes that's pointless, but they
Mm.
do need to be expressed to yourself.
Mhm.
And knowing how to handle these emotions is challenging because, again, where is it in school that we have a class on processing emotions?
Yeah. Yeah, no one. And
No,
it's like,
no.
the way that it is that, for one, your parents aren't taught this, you're not taught this. Therapy may be a good way to do that, but for one, there are a lot of bad and unconscious therapists out there. And two, it can be, I mean, I think it's getting better now that it's kind of encouraged, but in the past, maybe it was looked down on. Um, and also it's so expensive, either therapists aren't taking new patients, or you can't pay for one, you can't afford that. Your parents aren't gonna pay for that. Some people's parents are like, "You don't need that. That's oh my gosh," it's so hard to learn that because it's not offered. The education isn't offered to you at any point in your life unless you seek it.
Exactly. So, in order to get out of these things, in order to to end your shame or your fear, or your anger, or whatever, you've got to focus your attention,
Mm,
right? How do I do this? And then well, it used to be you could go on, you can start looking at YouTube videos, which is
mm,
actually a pretty darn good place to start a lot
yeah.
of times, and looking it up on Google, and finding books and taking summits, like we were talking about earlier. That's how I learn everything.
Yeah, yeah. YouTube is actually it's a very good source. I think it's how I started because it's, for one, it's free, and two, it's a very, I mean, there's a lot of educated people in there talking about their own experiences and healthy coping mechanisms, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty good source.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm,
So the next one, the fourth focus, is what's called the masculine or the feminine matrix. Now, in our world, we are taught a false idea of what it means to be female. What it means to be female is to look seductive, right?
mm, yeah.
Right? To dress up in a certain seductive manner, show certain body parts.
Mm,
And that's what an attractive, seductive woman, that's what it means to be a woman. You see people doing, changing from masculine to feminine, but it's the kind of feminine that's dressed in this really slinky dress
mm,
that's,
yeah.
it's like, that's not what it means to be a woman,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And
Or,
there's the false idea that I also want to point out too, there's a false idea that women, they connect the idea or that females have to be feminine and males have to be masculine. And I think that is completely wrong. I think that women I feel like both genders have to have some level of masculinity and femininity. It's our kind of like our divine right to be feminine and masculine. Those energies are, I feel like they have to coexist within you in order for you to be a fully balanced human. It's not like, I think that the idea that, oh, men crying, that's a feminine thing. Like, men can't express emotion like a woman, but then it causes all these men to build up all these emotions because they're shamed if they show any type of femininity when that's healthy. You're supposed to
right.
cry, you're supposed to feel emotions, you're supposed to, but it's looked down upon because it's not masculine, and that's a
Hmm.
toxic, concept.
Right, exactly. So men are taught this also completely false idea of what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
And we're taught this from a really, really young age. I mean, little boys come home from the hospital dressed in a blue Raiders jacket, and
Mm-hmm.
little girls come to the hospital with a little pink bow on
Mm-hmm.
their
Yeah. Yeah.
head. So from day one,
Yeah.
the programming begins.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, if this is your focus, you are going to want to really understand what it means to be a strong feminine presence. And like you said, the masculine and the feminine has to be balanced in each of us.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be men and women had their roles. Women stayed home and had their babies and took care of the family and the household, and men went out to the world and did the job,
Mm-hmm.
brought home the bacon, brought home the income,
Yeah.
and then a woman was completely dependent on a man. And if a man stopped on his way home from work and got drunk and came home and beat up his wife, well, too bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You got to stay with him anyway because you have no way to support yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You have no way to make a living. You've got all these kids you have to take care of. How are you going to do that? You don't have any skills,
Mm-hmm.
any
Yeah.
employable skills.
And I
Well, that
think
was,
it's
that was
kind of created this toxic home life to where now women are expected to work and to be a mom. Women are expected to work a 9 to 5, then come home and cook and clean and take care of their kids and, do everything. And it's like the man just goes home, he works his job, but then goes home, sits on the couch, drinks or does
mhm,
whatever. It's like men aren't expected to provide anymore and women aren't expected to just be a mom anymore, and
right.
I
Mhm.
think that it's like, men and women should have equal opportunity to work, but now there's so much expectation on a woman to do everything.
everything, right?
Yeah, because now it's like, "Oh, women, you wanna work? Okay, work and be a mom," and it's like, "Oh my god," and then men, men aren't expected to be a father, they think that if a man takes his kid for a walk, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're such a good dad," and it's like, "No, I'm being a dad," like, I'm just not
Right?
an absent father, like,
Father,
like,
exactly.
that should just be
Mhm.
normal, like, why is it that,
Yeah,
a woman doing her motherly duties is normal, and a man doing his fatherly duties is being a good dad.
exceptional, right?
Yeah, it's like, that's such a double standard, and it's not fair to women.
Yeah, in my mom's generation, it was the dad worked and the mom stayed home. That's exactly what was going on in my household. And
Mm,
my mom was always frustrated, always angry. She was a rageaholic. She had no power whatsoever. And
mm,
it was a very unhealthy dynamic. And then in my generation, so I'm 70, I came of age in the 60s. Well, men would get women pregnant, but then they wouldn't stay around to father the kids at all. Because
yeah,
why should they do that?
yeah, yeah,
And then they get into this situation of having to pay all this child support so they can never have a life of their own. I mean, it was insane. And I'm kind of out of touch with what's going on right now. But during my years as a psychotherapist, I was constantly working with women whose ex-partner had taken away their kids and just
mhm,
out of meanness and spite,
yeah,
and there was a lot of that going on. So it's just like insane. But
yeah, it I think it just because of the expectations that are put on both genders, or the lack of expectation put on men. I think women have so much more expectations on what it means to be a parent versus a man, A
hmm
man being a parent is optional almost, like,
uh-huh.
in a
Yeah,
lot of cultures and in a lot of, even in here, like in America, it's like men being a parent, oh wow, that's praised. But a woman being a parent, that's the bare minimum. And it's
right.
like, it's like, okay, that it's not fair because now women have to work and make a living and go home and take care. We're constantly working, and men don't
Constantly
have to.
cleaning and constantly cooking and yeah, all that.
Yeah.
But anyway, if this is your focus, the masculine feminine matrix is you're going to want to become a role model for other women or other men,
Mhm.
depending on what your gender is. And the person that I can think of that is really exemplifies this as a focus is Kim Anami. And I've talked to you before about Kim Anami. She is the first female sex therapist that ever existed. And she's made zillions of videos for YouTube. And some of those videos are specifically for women, some for couples, and some specifically for men. And she's created quite a movement in helping men get off of porn
Mhm.
because it's extremely toxic to the relationship and it's extremely toxic to the men as
Mhm.
well. And I've learned a lot from her just looking at her videos about this subject. It's like, wow, it's really opening your mind and seeing things that, again, you just didn't have any reason to see before.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so she sets herself up as a role model and
Mm.
my daughter loves her videos. She's always watching it. And I think this is definitely my daughter's one of her focuses. It's because she's thinking about it all the time.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
another way you know it's your focus. You're thinking about it all the time. The next focus is to confront your negative ego to understand and master it.
Mm.
So this is something we all have to do is confront our negative
Yeah.
ego and understand and master it. And you can see why if you're on a path of growth, you have to do this.
Mhm. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
absolutely have to do this. So for some people, it is a focus.
Yeah, for me, I think that's a big one. I'm always kind of, I mean, isn't it similar to having, like self-awareness and everything like that, paying attention to your negative ego and
Sure,
what
it's
you're
all about
doing?
self-awareness. I'm
Yeah,
where
yeah,
I'm coming from. Am I coming
yeah,
from kindness? Am I coming from my negative ego?
yeah. And sometimes I think this has been a big thing for me, and I'm almost kind of take it to the extreme where everything I do, even if it's like something that's, it could be, I don't know, I'm always trying to analyze myself and everything that I say, and it was to the point where I was like, you know, overthinking everything I did and said, which is can also be bad, but it's to the point where everything I said and everything I did, I'm like, why do I do this? Where is this behavior coming from? Is it because this happened to me when I was a kid? Is it because of this, incident that
Mhm,
happened to me when I was, 5 or when I was in high
mhm.
school or, and it was like I'm like obsessed with justifying my behavior that I can't even it was to the point where I couldn't even have fun anymore because I was analyzing why is this fun to me? Why do I consider this fun versus this person? Why do they not consider that fun? I was like kind of just analyzing everything and why I did it and where did that behavior come from? And it was, I'm kind of toning it down now, but it was to the point where it was everything.
I think you do have to do that for a while, though, especially when you're first awakening.
Yeah.
You know, that whole mindful piece is really important.
Mhm.
Especially becoming mindful of the negative ego. It's like lion.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I think of it, people who do this are like alcoholics or drug addicts, and if they go to AA, I'm going to be talking more about AA later on. It's a wonderful example. But in order to be an alcoholic, you have to be telling yourself a story that's motivating that, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Now they talk about something called a dry drunk. You know what that is?
Mm-mm.
It's somebody who's just quit alcohol, but they haven't done any of the inner work.
Mm.
You know, they still have all the same mindset and everything. They've just kind of willpowered it, not to drink.
Yeah.
But somebody who is really evolving in Alcoholics Anonymous and becoming a mentor for other people, they've done this work to look at their negative ego and look at how the lies that they have told themselves to
Mhm.
motivate themselves to tell themselves it's okay to drink, it's okay to get drunk, it's okay to completely disregard my body, it's okay to behave foolishly to other people. You know, it's okay to take this stranger to bed that I don't even know and couldn't care less about because I'm drunk, right? These kinds of things.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
all negative ego
Mhm.
leading us astray.
Yeah.
So the next focus that's in this small pool is called to encounter your character with its consistency of ideals, principles, and values, and to do the right thing according to whatever your principles are. So it's about developing your character to become a principled individual who is going to do the right thing no matter what.
Yeah. Essentially, it's kinda like your authentic self.
Yes.
Mm.
You know, someone who exemplifies this.
I was thinking maybe like Jesus was an
Yes,
example. Okay.
that's who
Yeah.
I have as my example.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes, he is the example of someone who stood on higher truth and um, didn't let other people tell him what to do. And
Mhm.
he continued to do the right thing as he understood it to be. And to him, the right thing was healing people and teaching them how to heal themselves and helping them look at their belief system and all the things that I'm teaching here.
Mhm. Yeah.
Didn't get him anywhere, did it? Got him
Mm.
killed.
Yeah. But, I mean, I to the point where I think he did leave an imprint on people. He did what he needed
So,
to do, you know?
yes,
Um,
he
it
changed the world.
Yes, and it he had probably a very hard life. He was murdered by the age of I don't know how old he was when he was crucified.
33 or something.
Yeah, very young, he was tortured and beat to death, but
Mm-hmm.
he did leave his impact, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So this next focus is to become a healer or teacher, which are basically the same thing. So your focus is going to be, how do I heal other people? How do I figure out, for some people, it'll be literally being a medical doctor, or it could be an alternative healer, an herbalist, it could be a psychotherapist, a health practitioner, a health coach, someone who uses a certain technology like rife machines or something of that nature where you're thinking about how do you heal this? How do we heal?
Mm-hmm.
And that's their focus, and that's all they think about. And the last focus that I have is to seek and search your spirituality or your relationship with divine love and eternal truth
Mm-hmm.
in whatever form you call that. So for me, all my focuses came out of this.
Yeah.
This is what I have been focused on. I went through my awakening when I was 37, and it's all I've thought about. God, how to heal myself, how to evolve. I'm also really interested in not only how to heal myself spiritually and emotionally and deal with all the shame, but also how to heal myself physically. I watch all these health summits all the time. I want to understand what makes the body sick. How do we get better? What are the emotional components of it? What are the physical components of it? What are the spiritual components of it? And when I started learning reality creation, literally, I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's called a focus,
Yeah. Yeah.
focused attention.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think yours are, Yvette?
Definitely it was the one where I forgot what exactly you said, but the one where you're focusing all on your negative ego.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big one for me. And dealing with shame. I think those are kind of the two biggest for me as of now. And of course, I mean that's for me how I grow spiritually because I think it's really important for me to know where my behavior is coming from, and that way I know how to correct it.
Mm-hmm.
Also with shame, everything that I feel shameful about, I analyze it. I'm very analytical. I've always been told that even when I was a little kid. I always analyze things and I look at, why do I feel shame? Okay, because I hurt this person. Why did I hurt that person? Okay, what can I do to solve that? How can I forgive myself? I think about it in steps and how to recover from an incident that may have brought me negative emotions, or emotions that block my growth in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to go over them really quickly and tell me if you think it's yours. So to learn about love in its entirety and completeness.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I think that's one for me too. I think all of them, honestly, like you were saying. I mean, I can relate to all of them in a way, and I think love is a big thing because when I was younger, I kind of rejected the idea. I was very I read this thing where it was like, as a adolescent or as a young adult, our focus is either on intimacy versus isolation. And I think with me, I isolated myself for a long time and I rejected the idea of love because I was hurt once by love.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, I can protect myself if I just, don't love anybody. Yeah. So, and as I'm getting older and I'm in a healthy relationship and I'm kind of learning that, and also, reading all these things that love and having loving relationships is, what kind of is a key to having a successful life. I'm kind of thinking now more that we have to have love in our life to be happy. And
Right.
of course, that should be the focus for anybody. And if it's not a focus for you, I think that maybe it can you won't be as fulfilled as if you had those loving relationships.
Mm-hmm. So the next one is communication as a means of self-expression.
Yeah. And that I think for me at least, it's always been kind of natural for me to communicate expressively and express myself that way.
Mm-hmm. To uplift people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe when I was younger, that wasn't really my
Mm-hmm.
focus, but now, of course.
But I think these videos that we're making, they're
Yeah.
part of this focus for you, right?
Yes. For sure.
Because I want to make a positive impact
Yeah,
on
and
other.
essentially teach other people how to cope with life and how to, grow spiritually and how to be happy and be your authentic self and live a, purposeful life. Yeah, that's spreading, how to be happy to other people. And yeah.
And the next one is encountering specific emotions,
Yeah,
possibly the
I think
shame you were talking.
mhm, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And then the masculine feminine matrix.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
to learn, figure out how do I be a female in this world? What does
Yeah.
it really mean? And you have a lot of ideas already.
Yeah, and me, even when I was very young, I used to consider myself like a tomboy, and I would, I didn't like all that. I mean, I did wear like frilly dresses, but then also some days I liked to wear like hoodies and sweatpants or pajamas to school. Like, for me, being feminine and being a woman doesn't equal femininity. For me, being a woman, at least in me personally, my definition is to balance femininity and masculinity in a way that promotes healing towards others, because healing is, I
Mm,
think, a feminine aspect, and that's a way for me to express that part of myself, not just in a feminine way but also in a masculine way, because and also healing the masculine, because there's a lot of men who are ashamed to be any percentage of feminine, and
mhm.
that's also very toxic, because then it
Yeah,
makes them bottle up their emotions, or it makes them hate women. There's a lot of men
right. Who
who,
hate women. Mhm.
yeah, and it's like, if
A lot of women who hate men. Mhm.
yes, yeah, I've heard a lot of women say, "Oh, I hate men," or, "Oh," like I was talking, I think with my coworkers the other day, and they were like, "Oh yeah, relationship, like that all fades, all that love, it fades." I'm like, "No, I think your relationship the love has faded. But an actual loving relationship, like a conscious relationship, it won't fade. It's not gonna go away. Like, I think you're just unhappy." Or like, I know a lot of,
Mhm.
now that I'm working a job with a lot of older people, women in their 30s, 40s, and they're like, "Oh yeah, men are like this. Men always forget. Men are," they talk so negatively about their husbands or the men in their life. And it's like, you're just very hurt by men, but that doesn't, I mean, that shows that the men are also socially programmed to treat women badly.
Yeah,
That, like, that's not their, I mean, it is their fault, but they're a product of their environment,
exactly.
just like women are. We both are taught to hate the other gender because of our differences, and we're not taught to understand each other. And
Right.
I think that's a big
Once again, we didn't have that in school, did we?
no.
Understanding the opposite sex. Now, how many people would go to that class?
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to maintain, especially to maintain, like, a heterosexual relationship, because if you don't understand where your partner is coming from, how are you supposed to love each other? How are you supposed to understand? If there's no understanding, there's no love, you know? You can't love something you don't understand.
Mhm.
At least
That's
I
true.
can. Yeah.
The next one was to encounter your character with its consistencies of ideals and become a highly principled person.
Mm, yeah.
Totally think you're into that, doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
Become a healer or a teacher.
Mhm.
You're a
Yeah.
natural teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, to me, I've always noticed that when I was younger, I've always kind of taken, even in like school projects or like group projects, I've always been like the leader. I've always been good at teaching. I've always been good at math, for example. That's the subject that a lot of people have a hard time with. I've taught people how to, solve an equation. I've taught people how to, even my friend groups, I would try to teach my friends, "Hey, this is not a positive, lifestyle that you're leading." And I've tried to help people, and I've tried to,
Mhm. Mhm.
say, "Hey, this is not like, if you do this, this is your consequence." And, I've always tried to kind of teach people and help people lead a positive life. Of course, they don't listen, if they're
Mhm.
if
Right.
they're, "Hey, I want to do this." And I'm like, "No,
Uh-huh.
don't." They're going to be like, "Okay, I'm going to do it." And,
Uh-huh.
that doesn't end well. But yeah, I mean, I think that I've always kind of tried to guide people in the right direction, because I don't know, like, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I feel like I've had a higher level of knowledge than my peers at an early age.
Mhm.
And, I've always kind of tried to share that knowledge with people. But
Right.
what teenager is going to listen to me talk about this
Hmm.
kind of stuff if they're not
That's
resonating
all
with?
right. They don't listen to me either.
Yeah. Yeah. Even as an adult, I'm still probably going to run into that problem.
Right.
But yeah, it doesn't help that I'm young either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you definitely have this focus. You're a teacher right down to your toes. Same
Yeah.
as me.
Yeah.
I came from a teaching family. My dad was a teacher. Both my brothers were teacher. I taught for years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's what I do. I teach people
Yeah.
things.
I think my grandma she was like a preschool teacher or kindergarten teacher. Yeah, she did teaching for young kids.
Hmm.
My parents didn't, but she did. That's the
You
only
have
thing.
to be a certain kind of person to want to be a teacher.
Yes. I feel like patience is a big thing to be a teacher.
And the last focus was to seek and search your spirituality.
Hmm.
And Yvette, you're just amazing to me.
Yeah.
You started so much younger than I did.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, but
Yeah, well, and I can say the same thing. In a
yeah.
secular world, being spiritual is kind of a curse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely more difficult, but I mean, it's more rewarding knowing that. I mean, I don't think I could have lived any other way. I don't think I would have been happy any other way because
Hmm.
you can't when you're this, like especially, when you're this knowledgeable and you feel so strongly, trying to fit into any other box, it just does not feel right. Yeah. And I think the spiritual journey, like the only way to get on it is when you're so fed up with the way that you've been living that you
Hmm.
want to change and you want to be different.
Right. And the spiritual journey is the way I healed myself. I
Yeah.
do not know how people can heal without it.
Hmm.
I honestly do not know. They
Yeah.
may not do it in the same form that I did it.
Yeah.
How can you heal without this knowledge?
Yeah. I don't think you can. And it's amazing how so many people think how like, oh yeah, like some people believe in it, some people don't. I'm like, well, everyone should because this is the only way you're going to the only way you're going to live without surviving. You could live or you
Hmm.
could survive. And I think that this is the only way people can actually live a genuine life.
Genuine life. That's
Yeah.
right.
It's not a matter of if you believe in it or not. And spirituality is such a broad term. Like to me, spirituality means my connection with God and my perception on life. Like spirituality is a whole lifestyle and it's a whole idea. To me, spirituality is like my religion. And
Hmm.
I feel like spirituality versus religion take when people hear religion, they take it so much more seriously than when they hear
Hmm.
spirituality. They think of crystals and I don't know, stuff like that. And that's not what spirituality is. It's so much more than that, and people don't understand it. And also a lot of people use it for the aesthetic, and that also gives it a bad name too, is because now there's all these false information spreading on TikTok, and they're like, "Oh, I'm spiritual. Look at all my crystals. Oh, I'm spiritual. Like, look at my, like they try to dress like a hippie, and they do it because it looks cool, and they
Hmm.
don't really know what it means, and that gives it a really bad name too."
Spirituality has to do with your relationship with your higher consciousness.
Mhm.
That's part of you.
Yeah.
Do you have a relationship with the higher parts of you?
Yeah.
And that's in these classes, I'm trying to give you a way to have that relationship.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about the life's lesson and the life's purpose. Again, the life's lesson is something that is self chosen before you're born.
Mhm.
Before you're born, you have a life's lesson. It begins at birth and doesn't end until you die. You will always have a life's lesson. And this is something big that you're trying to master.
Mm.
Um, and on the other side of the life's lesson is the life's purpose. Um, we talked about on the soul's path, we talked about the midlife crisis and how that can go on for several weeks or months or even years. That's always part of the life's lesson. You're a little bit young yet to know what your life's lesson is. But
Mhm.
when you get to my age and you can look back over your life, you can say, yeah, I had a life's lesson there, something I was really trying to learn.
Mhm.
And so let me just talk about my life's lesson for a minute. So just as an illustration, so I've talked to you about how I had to encounter this emotion called shame. And I had a mother that was not nurturing and that was always angry and calling me names and all these kinds of things. I wasn't hit or sexually abused or anything like that, but I was shamed a lot.
Mhm.
And I had a dark negative ego inside my head that was telling me all these bad things about myself all
Mhm.
the time. And um, as a result of this shame that I carried around inside me and feeling less than others and feeling like a loser and all of this kind of stuff, I was very lonely. I was very shy. I was very lonely. You know, I told you before that shame reflects in four different ways. One way is to physically hurt yourself, which I
Mhm.
wasn't doing. But the second way is the way almost everyone does it, is to have this negative inner dialogue all the time in which you're shaming yourself constantly. The third
Mhm.
way is to numb out with drugs and alcohol, which is very, very popular because at least you don't feel shame while you're doing it.
Yeah.
It's only afterwards that you feel the
Yeah, and
shame.
then you just do more drugs and you don't
Yes,
feel it anymore.
exactly. And I can party every day and I can get drunk every night, you know, and while I'm in that state, I'm not feeling shame. It's a
Mhm.
numbing device.
Yeah.
I never did that. I've never been drunk in my entire life. So I didn't have that to run to.
Mhm.
So it was always constant, this negative inner voice. And the
Mhm.
last way is to just to pass it on.
Mhm.
And you know, typically that's when you do that, you're kind of bullying other people. But, you know, you can do that with your negative ego. That's kind of what you were talking about, needing to forgive yourself, just saying cutting things and so forth and so on. And I did my share of that, definitely.
Yeah.
And, you know, by the time I was 36, 37 years old, I went through my awakening at 37. I was totally depressed. I mean, I was completely shame based. I was completely depressed. I felt like no one would ever love me. I was splitting up with my partner. I had three little kids. I didn't know how I was going to make a living. I was like impoverished. You know, I had all this education, but for some reason, I had so little self confidence in myself because of this shame that I wasn't able to manifest it as a decent paying job or anything like that. So
Mhm.
that's the pit I got myself into. That's the life's lesson. Get you into this pit. And I
Mhm.
had no idea how to get out of it. And then I went through my awakening experience on the day of the harmonic convergence. I began reading the Course in Miracles, and I was so taken with this book and this beautiful language that was in this book. And it's all about God and how much God loves you. And um, I mean, I was reading this book every single night.
Mhm.
And at a certain point, an inner guide came to me that I call the beloved, he would touch me energetically. And that's hard to explain if you've never had that experience. But he was right there with me. And I just fell in love with this being and the Course in Miracles and God. They were all intertwined in my mind, you know. And this was a very nurturing, very kind energy. And this guide I called the beloved, I would talk to him in my mind constantly, and he'd say he loved me. And I was always asking him, do you love me? Do you love me? And he finally said, you know what? I can tell you I love you 10,000 times, but if you won't believe me once, what's the point of me doing that?
Mhm.
And that just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, you know. It's like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
If I won't believe it, it doesn't matter how much he tells me, right?
Mhm.
So my journey into higher consciousness was about climbing out of this pit of shame
Mhm.
and learning how to love myself. And, you know, and even though for me it was coming from God and this higher being that I call the beloved, it's that those are still parts of me, right?
Mhm.
So learning how to love myself, learning how to allow the higher parts of me to love me
Mhm.
because they knew everything that I'd been through. They
Mhm.
not only know what I've been through this lifetime, they've known what I've been through and through all my lifetimes. They know exactly why I was in pain,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
so allowing them to love me was what actually healed me. And of course, I first began with reading the Course in Miracles, and I couldn't put it down, and it was so nurturing me, and it was helping me rewire the brain. That's what the Course in Miracles does best, because
Mhm.
you say all these affirmations, and when you say these affirmations, it helps you see the world differently. Have you started having that experience,
Mhm. Yeah, I
Beth?
think I'm on lesson 20 now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you're starting to just be more aware of your perception, and yeah, it does change how you see things because you're becoming aware of it even though it's right in front of you this whole time.
Right, exactly, but you couldn't see it because you're not aware, just like you say.
Yeah.
So anyway, it really changed my awareness and it really opened up my perceptions. And it was the Course in Miracles that first taught me that you create your own reality, that if you're not creating the exact reality that you want, that there's something inside of you, that you've got blockages inside of you. And of course, I'm 70 years old. So this was 1987 when I went through my awakening, and these concepts weren't even on the planet at that time. So I was so intrigued by that. How did I create having this mother that was so non-nurturing and kind of mean to me, and how did I create having all these diseases? I was always chronically ill with one thing or another, and how did I create all that? And I was just so intrigued by that. And then I discovered this channel being named Lazarus. And of course, Lazarus filled in all the blanks about how we create our reality, literally at the level of subatomic particles. And it was from him, he taught us, about the inner child and about past lives, and how past lives, what you don't learn in past lives becomes inventory for this lifetime, and how we keep living the same lessons over and over again, different forms, same content, giving ourselves an opportunity to try to figure all of this out. And then his whole thing was to connect us with the higher self and the soul eventually, and then eventually Goddess. And he talked about God, but he says, you know what, God has been in your world for many thousands of years now. You've kind of forgotten about the Goddess. You've gone to sleep. So let's just talk about the Goddess, because the feminine aspect of God is as important as the masculine. He never made it a hierarchy, but let's focus on the feminine now. So he talked to us about the higher self, the soul, which is the feminine energy, and the goddess. And we do all these incredible meditations. He guided us through visualizations in which we could connect with these higher parts of ourselves and create a relationship. It was incredibly powerful, beautiful work. And I learned how to do the inner child work and past life work, heal past life personalities, and all of that kind of stuff. So I learned step by step and day by day how to climb out of that pit.
Mhm. Yeah.
That was my life's lesson. And
Mhm.
it is my life's purpose to give this information to other people. That is what a life's purpose is. You
Mhm.
create a lesson that's a problem to you. If you're lucky, and Lazarus says most people never do this until their last lifetime, they'll
Mhm.
figure out how to climb out of the pit. And we don't figure it out if you're in blame, right? Victim consciousness stagnates all growth. You're blaming all your problems on other people. You're not looking to yourself as the cause.
Mhm.
You never climb out of that pit. You don't figure it out.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
don't work with your higher consciousness to figure it out.
Mhm.
It's not that God waves a magic wand and says you're healed now.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. They'll
No.
give you all kinds of information,
Yeah.
mostly by sending you books and teachers and, you know, people in your life that are maybe teachers in a bad sense, but,
Yeah.
you know, but it's still teachers. And it's figuring it all out. This is the game plan here.
Mhm.
This is everybody's game plan
Mhm.
without exception.
Yeah.
Why don't we know this? Why isn't it in high school?
Yeah, that's
Why
crazy to
don't
me.
why don't we start it in kindergarten?
Yeah. I saw this post on Instagram and it was like the world if emotional success and spiritual success was as valued as financial success, and it was this like utopia, and there was birds everywhere, and everything was built like it looked like what you see in movies of like the perfect
Hmm.
world, and it was like, like that's what the world would be like if everybody valued, happiness over material gain and material success.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So the life's lesson is going to wreck your life.
Hmm.
It will for everybody. You start. Let me turn this off. You starts at birth, ends at death. You're always going to be dealing with it. But when you learn the lesson, you can apply what you've learned to future challenges
Hmm.
and overcome them more and more and more rapidly.
Yeah.
So all the good things in your life and all the bad things in your life are part of that life's lesson. Everything you've been through with your parents, your dad, your high school friends, all that part of that life's lesson.
Hmm.
And also the good things,
Yeah.
part of that life's lesson. And
Mhm.
when you get to the end of your life, you can see how it's all unfolding. So, as an example of somebody else's life's lesson, someone quite famous, I like to use the example of Bill Wilson. Do you know who Bill Wilson is?
Mm-mm.
He's the creator of AA. So, Bill Wilson was an alcoholic. And like many alcoholics, he was ruining his life. He couldn't stop drinking, and he would go to counselors, and he couldn't stop drinking, and he couldn't stop drinking. And I don't know his exact history, but I can imagine he might have been one to have ruined his relationships with, because of his alcoholism, and, perhaps having financial problems because of his alcoholism, all the typical things, right, that happen to alcoholics. Well, he happened to be really lucky, and he went to a psychotherapist named Carl Jung.
Mm.
He's very, very famous.
Mm.
And he also got involved in Eastern religions and had some gurus that helped him understand what he then later became the 12 steps. As an alcoholic, he was surrounded by alcoholics because alcoholics love to drink with other alcoholics.
Mhm.
He learned how to get out of the pit step by step, day by day.
Mm.
And then he created the 12 steps and he gave this to the world.
Mm.
And it is the most famous spiritual healing system in the world, not attached to any religion. But the first step, the 12 steps?
Mm-mm. No.
The first step is to admit that you are powerless against your alcoholism and that you have to give this power, this problem to a higher power. Let me
Mm.
see. I got it written down in here. Step number one, you have to admit that your life has become unmanageable because no matter how hard you try, you just can't stop drinking
Mm.
or taking drugs or gambling or porn or whatever the thing is. Couldn't stop telling myself I was no good. That's an addiction,
Mm.
right? We get addicted to our own negative thinking. So AA has been applied to every kind of addiction that there could possibly be. Step two, you must develop an understanding of higher power. I'm kind of putting this into my own words and why it is needed to restore your sanity. Isn't that what I've done for you in these
Yeah.
classes?
Yeah.
That God isn't somebody out there
Yeah.
outside of you who
Mhm.
waves a magic wand.
Mm.
God is part of you. You have a God self.
Yeah. It's within yourself.
It's you have a higher self that understands the bigger picture. And you
Mhm.
can connect with that part of you. You have a soul that is unbelievably kind and nurturing and loving.
Mm.
And you have a God self that's empowered,
Mm.
fully knowledgeable, fully loving,
Mhm.
unconditionally loving, forgiving everybody with the biggest heart in the world, but
Mhm.
so strong and so powerful, filled with self rulership,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
That's your God self, right? And we're trying to create a relationship with higher power,
Mhm.
not with somebody else or
Mhm.
something else,
Yeah.
with ourselves.
Mm.
So, anyway, I'm paraphrasing and kind of putting it in my own words to help you understand how I'm bringing forward the same system.
Mhm.
So, the third step number 3, you make a decision to place your life into the hands of a higher power as you understand it to be. So, that's the decision to walk in faith. I don't understand it yet.
Mhm.
I don't completely see the bigger picture, but I'm going to walk in faith,
Mm.
believing that these things are true, even before I know they're true. The fourth step, you have to do your shadow work. They call this taking a fearless moral inventory, in which you come to understand how many people you have hurt because of your drinking and the story you have told yourself that caused you to do it.
Mm.
And it could be your drinking or your gambling or your negative thinking or whatever,
Mhm.
right? Step 5, you must admit to yourself, to your higher power, and to another human being the exact nature of your wrongs.
Mm.
So you have to call a spade and say, yes, I did this. That's what you were talking about today. You're looking at your life from now a higher perspective than you were when you said those things, right?
Yeah.
And going, wow, I did those things. And you have owned it to me and you have owned it to anyone who watches this.
Mhm.
That's an important step.
Yeah.
Step number 6, after much inner work and spiritual education, you must admit to yourself that you are no longer ignorant about higher truth and how you are creating your reality. This is when you're ready to ask God to remove all your character weaknesses. So in other words, you've seen what you've seen, right? You say,
Mhm.
okay, I have a problem with my negative ego.
Mm.
I can see it. I can just cut people to ribbons with my words.
Mhm.
You've seen it. It's like a pattern inside of you, an energy pattern inside of you. So you go to your, what the Christians call your prayer closet, or you go inside, you close your eyes, you're talking to God, this one up here at the top of your chakras,
Mhm.
right? Okay, I have this. I'm not proud of it. I want to change it. I need your help.
Mhm.
That's all you're saying. I need your help. And once you say that prayer, you set something in motion.
Yeah.
It's a resonance of vibration. You're sending it out to the universe.
Mhm.
I need help to take charge of my negative ego or my shame or whatever it is.
Mhm.
I don't want to have this as part of me anymore. And, I've put in there, after much inner work and spiritual education, it's like in the AA program, they talk about God, but nobody knows what it means and it's not defined. I've worked with a lot of people as a psychotherapist who are also in AA. And we'll talk about the first step, and the first thing we talk about, okay, tell me what your definition of God is. And
Mhm.
we spend days
Yeah.
just talking about, this is what you're talking about.
Mhm.
That part of AA that really falls down. And of course, they're written in steps, but it takes a long time to see your shadow.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
takes a long time
Yeah.
to figure all this stuff out. So step 7 is you must take another step in faith and ask your God self to remove your shortcomings. Well, shortcomings are a little bit different than your shadow, right? Shortcomings are more like, well, I'm kind of lazy.
Mhm.
I don't want to do the work. I don't want to have any goals. I don't want to,
Yeah.
that's what I think of as shortcomings.
Mm.
I'm not going to do the work I need to do to make myself, I worked with kind of developmentally challenged people, and they all wanted a girlfriend or a boyfriend, but it was like, you don't even put on a clean shirt.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's like you're not
you want
exactly a
God to bring
pet.
you
Yeah.
exactly. You
Yeah.
want God to bring you a girlfriend, but you're not even willing.
It's like, would you date yourself? Mm,
Exactly.
yeah.
But, with those of us who aren't developmentally disabled, we're talking about inside,
Mm,
the dirty stuff that's inside of us.
yeah.
How willing are you to do that work?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be a shortcoming. Well, that's so hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Those are, in my opinion, that's shortcomings.
Yeah.
In step 8, you make a list of all the people you've harmed and become willing to make amends to them in whatever way that is appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard step,
Yeah.
especially if you're alcoholic and have really harmed people. Say you got drunk and drove and crippled somebody.
Mm-hmm.
That'd
Yeah.
be a really hard step. In step 9, you actually go to the people that you've harmed and make amends.
Mm-hmm.
Say you're sorry or whatever you need to do. In step 7, you continue to do your inner work and promptly admit when you are wrong. See, that's kind of where you're at right now, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
what we talked about last time, last class. You have to admit,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, I broke a jewel,
Yeah. Yeah. Like, oh,
maybe
that
2
one's
or
mine.
3.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh-huh. In step 11, you continue to evolve your understanding of God through prayer and meditation to improve conscious contact with all the higher parts of yourself, praying only for the knowledge of His will for you and the willingness to carry it out. So, what is God's will? That you live your life's purpose and give to others all that you have received. And since it's what you know the most about, because I guarantee you, when I figured all this out and had figured out, I felt like I was basically healed, was like, well, that was a lot of work.
Mm. Yeah.
How many people are capable of that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really difficult. And like you said, there's a lot of people with those shortcomings that are like, oh, that's too much work. Or, I'm fine the way I am, or they try to make excuses as to not
The
to basically get
excuses.
out of doing the work. And and it's like how many people are willing to actually evolve and go through all that work to become healed.
Right.
Mm,
Exactly.
yeah.
And of course, here's the beauty of AA. AA is just a group of normal people, and there'll be newbies in there who are just beginning the process of giving up alcohol. And there's nothing easy about giving up alcohol because it's deteriorated your brain. You're not thinking straight. You're not processing. Your liver's damaged. So if you take even one drink, you're not processing it correctly. Um, and but it also has the old timers, and the old timers mentor the newbies.
Mm,
And that's what's so beautiful about this particular paradigm, because the ones who have gone before, it's just like in the Course in Miracles, Jesus says he's just an elder brother who's walked the path before us, and therefore I'm qualified to give you a hand and
mm,
walk you along and point out all the pitfalls,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
He's more than qualified to do that because he got himself up out of the pit and evolved. He evolved way more than I have or most people have.
Yeah.
He was able to create miracles. Why? Because he was at one with his God self.
Hmm. Yeah.
He was completely loving, completely forgiving, completely empowered, standing on a higher truth, highly principled, knowing that everything we create is a projection. It's all in the mind. And if you can change the mind, you change the reality.
Hmm. Yeah.
Amazing. And then he taught us all how to do it. And this is what AA exemplifies. I love this program.
Hmm. Yeah.
I've kind of put it all in my own words in the way that I see it, but I would like to kind of reform AA so that they spend a long time on step number 1.
Yeah.
What the
And
heck is God?
yeah, and AA, I feel like it can be applied to any addiction, not just
Any,
alcoholism.
yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it can even be applied to any mental illness.
Hmm.
Depression is an addiction. Anxiety is an addiction. It's an energy pattern you have where your mind is constantly going on this negative loop all the time.
Hmm. Yeah.
social phobia, any of them.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's all part of the same process. It doesn't have to manifest as an external addiction. Mine wasn't an external addiction.
Mhm.
I wasn't an alcoholic or a gambler, a drug addict, or any of those things. And consequently, I never looked at AA as a pathway. It
Mhm.
could have been.
Yeah.
My addiction was to shame. So anyway, that's life. So we've gone over destiny, fate. Destiny is your destination, but you can only get there if you're conscious.
Mhm.
Otherwise, your life is fated. We went over the focuses, and we've gone over life's lesson and life's purpose.
Yeah.
And that's the class.
Yeah, it's really important. I think, all these classes are really important to reach your higher power and, have healthy coping mechanisms. That's what it all kind of stems down to is how you deal with struggles or how you deal with an inconvenience, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's true. It's all about how to deal with stress. And my way of dealing with stress is always to bring God into the equation.
Yeah. Yeah.
My life is held in God's hands.
Yeah. And that would be considered a healthy one, but not, I feel like there's more unhealthy coping mechanisms that people use rather than healthy ones.
Hmm. Yeah, because most people are using some kind of drug or alcohol or pharmaceutical or
Hmm.
something of that nature, which is they're just all toxic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I have helped a lot of alcoholics get over their alcoholism, and I love to counsel alcoholics when they're in AA because what I say and what the AA says,
Hmm.
they're supporting one another
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah.
But this can be applied to anything, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what's cool about it. It's not just tailored for one specific thing.
Hmm.
What is the next class we will be doing?
We're going to be talking specifically about victim consciousness and higher
Oh, yeah.
consciousness and how to create that bridge.
Okay.
There's so much to know.
Yeah.
It's like reality creation is a gigantic cookie,
Yeah.
and you can only take one little bite at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so much information that it's impossible to fit in 1 week or even 1 month. Like it's probably like a lifelong journey.
It's
You're
a
always learning about
lifelong
it.
journey, and a lot of the things I'm teaching you, of course, I got from Lazarus, but over months.
Hmm. Yeah.
I've condensed it all down to what I think of as the key components of healing. I've condensed it all down to a kind of a 12, 13-week class if you don't count, if you with class 3, I put part 1 and part 2, but so it's basically 13 weeks. But it took me months and months to gather this information and cost me thousands and thousands of dollars to get it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So
And I'm so glad to give it away.
yeah, yeah, it's really essential information and I'm glad that you're willing to share it with everybody and teach people how to be healthy.
Hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Bye.
All right. Bye.